So a couple of years ago, I made a video on anime figure pre-orders and why they were starting to feel pretty damn pointless. It was a sentiment that was really resonating with a lot of people at the time, and that was regardless of if they watched my video or not. Everybody was talking about it. It felt like the community came together as a whole and agreed that if you were collecting anime figures much like the ones behind me, then there wasn't really a reason to pre-order anymore. But now we're a bit separated from that time. We're in the big 2025, and I want to take a crack at this once again. See if things have changed for the better or the worse. So that's what we're gonna do today. Alright, so let's get the basics out of the way very quickly. Why would you pre-order an anime figure? It's pretty simple. You want to guarantee that you're actually going to receive it. Unless you're pre-ordering on Amazon Japan, then it's a gamble. They might cancel on you. But everywhere else, you should be pretty good. And not to mention, this is the best way to actually support the company or the franchise that you're really invested in, so you get more figures of these characters, or just maybe the company that makes them continues to thrive. Also, we should mention that, of course, the price can increase over time, and nobody wants to spend more money. On the flip side though, why wouldn't you want to pre-order an anime figure? Well, you don't really know how it's actually going to turn out until it's in your hands. Even if you're pre-ordering from a very reputable company, they can make mistakes too. Good Smile, Kotobukiya, Mega House, Alter, Amakuni, they make mistakes. It happens from time to time. Honestly though, and I think this is the bigger reason people don't pre-order, is because the price can absolutely plummet. We've seen that so often. A lot of figures that come out nowadays still drop in price pretty dramatically. It just feels like there is an abundance of choice for us, whether a figure is getting mass produced way over the demand for it, or there's just so many options for you that us as collectors can't possibly keep up with. Unfortunately, we've just been conditioned to not really want to spend that much money because we know that the prices will eventually go down for a lot of these figures. But I think because of that, we're starting to see a bit of a shift in terms of like specific types of anime figures, specific characters. It gets a little complicated, and I certainly don't have all the answers. I want to state that right now. All of this is just my opinion based off of my experiences in this hobby, but I do think a different strategy is necessary going into the future because it's not the same as it was just a couple of years ago. So what I've done is wrote down a bunch of examples on my phone for figures that I think you should and shouldn't pre-order. And since I'm gonna miss a few, I'm sure I'm gonna miss some stuff that you think I really should have talked about, be sure to let me know those in the comments down below, and we'll have a nice little discussion about it. But I think we gotta start somewhere, so let's do an easy one. Azur Lane. Most people will tell you, no reason to pre-order these. There's always some exceptions, and I think for everything I'm about to talk about, there will be an exception, because otherwise the consumer would have way too much power and these companies would just not be able to actually make any money if we just weren't buying anything they were making until they came out. But yeah, Azur Lane, for the most part, I still agree that there really isn't a reason to pre-order most of those figures. Except there is a new exception to the rule, and I call it the secret nudity clause, which is happening quite a bit lately. And what that basically means is that there's a figure that is shown up for pre-order, it looks pretty normal, figure comes out, and then there's just nudity on it. They did not advertise that feature at all, and it makes collectors kind of go nuts. They just really want to pick it up at that point, which is pretty interesting. They had like no interest in the figure whatsoever, but you see something that you shouldn't, and then they want to go crazy for it. But hey, a little spice in your life can certainly do you some good. But it isn't exclusive to Azur Lane. Freeing also does this. They've done it with Albedo, the freeing bunny, which dramatically increased in price as soon as collectors found out that you could take off the suit. It's a pretty sneaky tactic considering how secretive they are on this information. I think in one case with like Apex, they had the Baltimore figure from Azur Lane, and then it was Prince who came afterwards, and I think she didn't have any like nudity, but Baltimore did. That's kind of messed up because they got the expectations and then they just threw them away. They did not do it the next time, which I'm sure made that Prince figure have so many more pre-orders, but then more like upset customers when it wasn't on the final product. So Azur Lane, for the most part, you don't have to worry about too much. Girls Frontline, I feel like most of those figures also do hit the bin, though I'm wondering if Girls Frontline 2 is going to change anything. I feel like it won't, but that game is like insane right now. People are talking about it quite a bit. The 3D models in that game are insane. You've probably seen them. Just, I don't even know what to say about them, but pretty good stuff. They certainly know what they're doing over there, but I'm not sure if that like translates into better sales for the anime figures. Blue Archive is a little tricky. I feel like these figures kind of have a tendency to go up a little bit. I can think of Wakamo, who is very expensive from Neon Max. We have Arona, which I think was Golden Head, very expensive until she got a re-release, and I don't know if the price went down that much. It probably did. There was Neru from Spirit Tail. I think her price is like in the 30,000s right now. We also have Goddess of Victory Nikkei, which I think is too new. I don't think there's enough data right now to really say which way you should go in terms of pre-ordering. Does seem like these are going to be extremely popular figures though, and I'm assuming they'll meet the demand, so I don't think the figures will be hard to find, but I think it's too inconclusive right now. Fate Grand Order is a pretty interesting one. It kind of just depends on the character, and there's so many characters, though it does feel like every single one I'm interested in does drop in price. Maybe I have shit taste. I don't know, but it works for me because I'm saving a lot of money, and I do feel like a lot of the male figures do increase because there's not as many of them, of course, but I do think this is a pretty good example and a great time to talk about regional price differences depending on like the character or the figure, because a character may be way more popular somewhere else in the world, and because of that, the demand for those figures will be way higher, which means the prices will be way higher. But you come over here, maybe in the States, people don't care about the characters, and then you can find some great deals. There's certainly a lot of examples for this. I remember specifically that the Max Factory Shuten Doji was like way more money in Japan, but anybody selling her in the States really didn't care to get that much money for it. It was usually like 150 or so. And I think that was also pretty similar for like Korone from Hololive. Like that figure seems kind of difficult to get, the Spirit Tail one in Japan, but there's like so many of them floating around here. Alright, so now that I'm editing this video, I'm realizing this was actually a pretty bad example to make. Who would have guessed that a few years would totally change the availability of a figure? But yeah, Korone is actually pretty difficult to find in the States as well. So instead, we can look at the Korone Nendoroid, which is around 10,000 yen on the pre-owned section, yet you can find this at various retailers over here in America for around $40 or so. It's so much cheaper, it's so easily available, and I guess it just goes to show you that she's much more in demand over there in Japan than she is here in America. But yeah, Hololive figures, certainly ones that you should pre-order, just like across the board, don't worry about it. Hololive is growing immensely. There are so many figures currently in production, and if you like them, I don't think you should take the risk. You know, now might actually be a great time to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Beanos, as you're likely looking for a place to buy some anime figures on the aftermarket. The Beano store on Mercari US lets you purchase a wide variety of unique and discounted items straight from Japan, as they connect you to the largest marketplace app in Japan, Mercari Japan, which, as some of you may know, I'm very fond of. Anime figures, retro video games, plushies, Pokemon cards, Japanese fashion, it's all here. And now through Mercari US, you can order these items without having to deal with the hassles of international shipping. And finding the Beano store is actually super easy. All you gotta do is search for your desired items with the right keywords. We'll use anime figures for now, and then simply change the item's origin on the left side of the page to Japan. That's really all you gotta do to get started. From here, it's just like shopping on Mercari US normally. They've got dedicated customer support ready to answer any of your questions, and you're even able to bundle various items into one package before it gets sent off to you. If you've been hesitant to shop at Mercari Japan in the past due to all the extra steps required, then this can be a great place to start. So be sure to check out the link below in the description and head on over to the Beanos store. Thanks to Beanos for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get back to it. Alright, so our next topic is a pretty broad one, so you're gonna have to stay with me. Hopefully you agree, but you don't have to. But I think for the most part, when it comes to cheaper figures, like relatively so, under $100 around that price mark, you should just pre-order them. You shouldn't worry about it too much, because if they were actually to get a price decrease, it's not gonna be dramatically so. If a figure is $50 and it gets half off, you're saving 25 bucks. If a figure is $200 and it's half off, you're saving 100. Whenever I see a Nendo, a Figma, a Figuarts, a pop-up parade, I usually just go for it. I don't think about it too much because I feel like either they're going to kind of just stay where they're at or increase because people will take them for granted, assuming they'll just sit around, just be on the shelf form and whatnot. But that isn't always the case. Now I guess I should correct myself and say that you don't have to pre-order all of these, but I do think you should be aware of when they're actually coming out. and just see if you like the final product. And if you do, I think that would be a good time to pick them up, because usually they're going to be available. But again, not always the case. I don't think it should be a surprise to anybody that Maka from Soul Eater's pop-up parade, not even a large pop-up, is very desirable, because her other figure was extremely hard to find and like $500 when you did, and this was like the next best thing. In fact, I like it a little bit more, but you can't really get that figure for a good price anymore. And it was like $40 originally, so why take the risk, right? Something I definitely didn't talk about last time was Figuarts, just because I don't collect too many of them, but in my opinion, you see a Figuart you like, you should just buy them. It feels like Bandai knows exactly how many to make and how to drive up demand for them, especially if you're into Dragon Ball. But if you are, you don't need my advice here, because you know that everybody that likes Dragon Ball are into these figures, and they're going to increase in price as soon as they sell out. Hell, the Free Ren Figuarts is like 24,000 yen on AmiAmi's pre-owned or something. I think I might have said Figma during that last group, and honestly I'm not really sure how I feel about Figma. Certainly their popularity, that line as a whole, is not what it used to be, because people just really aren't thrilled with how expensive they are. But, you know, the quality's definitely still there, and I would say for certain series, it definitely makes sense to still buy them. One of the first ones that come to mind is just Metroid. Like, every single Samus Figma is hard to find. They're expensive. And then there's Emmy from Metroid Dread. That should have been like the most obvious, I'm gonna pick this up if I'm a Metroid fan figure, because who else is going to make an Emmy figure? And that thing is phenomenal as far as posability goes. It's so big too. I think the value was there. It was like 15,000 yen, but like, that's a very impressive articulated figure. And I just know that's going to be so obscure in the future. I think it's hard to get already, and it's only been out for like a year. But yeah, you know, dedicated fan bases really do matter when it comes to figures shooting up in price. And you're probably thinking, doesn't that just mean popularity, like the show or the game is just very popular? Yes, but also no. I'm talking about when a franchise is so beloved that people want to base their entire personality behind it. You go into somebody's house and everything they own is from software. They just have Dark Souls, Sekiro, Bloodborne stuff all over their house. It's their lifestyle at this point. It's basically their identity, and you could do that with any franchise that you want. Nobody's stopping you. But if you're the only guy doing it, then the figures and the merch isn't really going to be as desirable, right? You need something that a majority of people are just absolutely obsessed with. It's why the Pokemon figures are so goddamn desirable on the aftermarket. It's not because Kotobukiya made the best Pokemon figures ever. No, they're very faithful. They're great, especially for the price. But people just adore that franchise. It's the biggest freaking franchise in the world, I'm pretty sure. And like, everybody's gonna want a piece of that. People want the games, people want the cards, having the characters as figures. That's just awesome. You want that on your shelf if you're a Pokemon fan, and there are so many Pokemon fans that of course the demand is just never going to be met. Persona 5, another great example of a franchise that people just obsess about and they want as much as possible from it. Those figures usually increase in price compared to even Persona 3, which I think is a better game. I fucking love that game. I really like Persona 5 too, but my favorite is with 3. Nobody cares about the figures to the same degree. All of them seem to just drop in price, at least for the most part, maybe a couple here and there, but you get what I mean. They're not as desirable as Persona 5. Not even sure what's going on with Persona 4. I think if that gets a remake, we'll see how that does, but I don't think it'll reach the same heights as Persona 5 because it's just in a different league. I do want to change topics, but a couple more that just come to mind. We have Berserk. Of course, you just have to buy Berserk. Beloved franchise. Mentioned Dragon Ball earlier. Think that's another one you just kind of have to go for. One Piece as well. So many One Piece figures. Usually you have to go a little bit out of your way to get those Mega House figures, but I mean, it's One Piece. It's so fucking good. Do we even need to talk about Demon Slayer? Because it feels like we don't even get scale figures anymore. They're like on hiatus right now. This was like the series not to pre-order because every single one, as good as they might be, will drop in price. It was nuts. There was literally no reason to pre-order anything from Demon Slayer, which is such a shame because like it just means now nobody really wants to make any. I do know Good Smile made those big black box figures with Tanjiro as well as Nezuko. I don't know if the Nezuko one is out. I know the Tanjiro one is so discounted. That figure pretty much failed, which is a shame. Beautiful concept. They did a great job with it, but I just think it was too niche of an idea. People didn't really want it in their collection. They couldn't really figure out a way to incorporate it with the rest of their figures. You know what's kind of been a bummer to collect for? Chainsaw Man. Every single Chainsaw Man figure I've been interested in, and I've bought 5 so far, have all dropped in price. Excuse me, I bought 7 because I had 2 Nendos as well. Every single one decreased in price. And I don't think it's because people don't like the figures. I think they're just way too expensive when they initially go up for pre-order. They're all so goddamn expensive. I think the license is just way too much, and it's really biting them in the ass. Like, people aren't willing to go for them, at least not enough. So, you know, they're producing so many of them, the demand isn't there, and then they drop in price. I do have a few more written down here that I don't really have too much to discuss about, like Idolmaster Love Live figures. For the most part, if it's an idol girl, it's usually going to drop in price, which I don't like. I like those figures. I wish they would actually keep their value, but they never do. We have Prisma Wing, which is one of the few companies I'm going to point out in this video just because, like, nothing they've made has really stuck the landing. A lot of people have just been disappointed, or the figures are way too expensive when they initially go up for pre-order. I think they recently, like, really botched a figure from Data Live. I think it was of Karumi. And that was like a 50,000 yen figure or something, which is just unacceptable. For that much money. That needs to be a beautiful figure, and it just wasn't. I wrote down Freeing just because the hype has really died down on this company. I feel like for as much as they're making, a lot of them really aren't grabbing as many people's attention, unless there's some like special gimmick behind it, or they have a very, very nice design. I believe their Sophia F. Shearing figures are also pretty popular, but I just don't see the same excitement for these Freeing figures anymore. I know people still like them, and I'm not here to bash on them or anything, but certainly compared to like a couple of years ago during the pandemic, they're just not the same level of popularity that they once were. And I think it's okay to wait on most of them, especially when they're like almost 40,000 yen. I also wrote down Ryza from the Atelier Ryza games. Now, initially, like when there were only a few figures from, say, Wonderful Works, I do think they had a pretty high demand. But now that there's like 30 plus figures for her, and they're all really good, I don't think you have to worry too much because there's just a bit of oversaturation at this point. More choice means that like these companies have to fight harder for your money. And like I said earlier, people don't have the funds to buy every single good figure of this character. Not to mention a re-release can also heavily alter things. You might remember the Kurisu Reading Steiner version from Good Smile Company. That was simply the Kurisu figure to get, which led to it becoming quite pricey shortly after release. You know, the status of Steins Gate, the popularity of Kurisu, and a rather high price tag just led to many regrets down the line for those who didn't get her at launch. Thankfully, Good Smile Company was quick to act on a second release of the figure, but sometimes we aren't that lucky, and predicting a re-release isn't always easy, though some companies are much more likely to do them, which you should consider if you're doing some aftermarket hunting. A little bit of research goes a long way in this hobby. That does bring me to Hatsune Miku, which is really like interesting right now because some of these Good Smile Company figures are ludicrously expensive. You've probably heard of the Strawberry Miku, the Shimian Maifu version, the 16th anniversary birthday version. All of these figures dramatically increasing in price, especially the Strawberry Shortcake one. But it was shelf warming for a while. You could have bought that for a much cheaper price than she initially released for. But after a while, I don't know what really set it off. She just kept increasing, and now she's around 100,000 yen, which is bonkers. I cannot remember the last time a Good Smile Company scale was that expensive. Now, I think because Hatsune Miku basically is anime figures, it just makes sense that like you're going to overlook some, you're not going to be able to pick up all of them, because you just can't. There's way too many. But I don't think anybody foresaw this figure increasing that much. Something of note though, and I'm not sure if this is the best place to talk about this, but I'm gonna do it anyway, I feel like it's relevant enough, is that bigger figures can definitely scare potential customers, especially internationally, now that shipping costs are so high. Now, if you were lucky enough to buy, say, one of these Miku figures, the strawberry one for instance, from Good Smile Global, that would be like $18, a great deal. But if you were to buy her on AmiAmi, probably like 10,000 yen to ship that. They might have been very excited for the figure initially, even pre-ordered it, but as soon as those quotes were coming as far as shipping would cost, they canceled on it. And that could also really mess up the aftermarket on a figure. There's a ton of people canceling their pre-orders like last minute, because these sites have to order the figures in advance. It's not like they order them last second, the day of release. They go up to Good Smile Company and be like, hey, can I have 200 Mikus, please? It's not how it works. There's a pre-order window for a reason. Now, I should note that I don't think this is going to be the fate of every Hatsune Miku figure. I don't think the S-Fire ones or the Furyu ones are going to drastically increase in price, but the really nice ones from Good Smile, maybe Max Factory 2, I do think you need to keep a close eye on them, and if you like a design, I think you should just be safe and pre-order them. Another instance where we could talk about a very specific character is Eve from the artist Rurudo. You might not be aware of this artist, you might not be aware of this character, but if this is your first time seeing them and you like it, or honestly any of the characters this artist make, I think right now, you gotta pre-order them. I do feel like the bubble will burst eventually, because this is absolutely going to catch on and everybody's just gonna start pre-ordering these figures, and at some point, there will just be too many. But right now, it seems like a safe bet, and you should just, play it safe. There's also Teto, who you're probably familiar with if you follow Vocaloid and just stuff like that, who is extremely popular right now. Don't think she has many figures, but her Nendoroid is extremely expensive. One of those like $300 Nendos for whatever reason, I guess because she just did not have that many figures on the market. This was the perfect opportunity to get one. I mean, it kind of just goes to show you that a price increase can happen at any time for really any reason. I think Teto is a bit of a meme at this point. I do see her like all the time. But another one that I was just like recently made aware of, which I could not remember the name of it, was a series called You and Me and Her. There's a couple of characters or figures from Griffin Enterprises, which is not a good company, and people are willing to spend so much money on these two figures because I think recently, and by recent I mean about 5 years ago, this game or visual novel actually came out in the West, so people were made aware of it, and it seemed to just be very popular with certain circles and crowds and just, fans and whatnot. And I guess because how limited the merchandise was for this game, but people found out there were some figures, like everybody who likes that game wants them, and they go for crazy amounts of money. Well, that or the whole anime core trend, which is very popular right now, and I'm pretty sure these two fit like that aesthetic perfectly, though I'm not like really in the know about all of this, so yeah, I guess I'll just leave it at that. Guess I should talk about Xenoblade. I feel like that's a pretty safe series to actually pre-order for, unless it was Pyra and Mithra, because they overproduced those so much. They made like way too many of them. I mean, they had the Smash effect where they were put into Smash Ultimate, so of course that was going to drive up the price. Even seeing like those two figures on the Sakurai Presents video for Pyra and Mithra must have done numbers for the sales on those two. But, if you never played Xenoblade 2, you might not really care about those two after a while. Even if you play Smash Brothers, you might not give a shit about them because, you just bought them because they look good. And certainly they do. I love those figures, but I'm also a fan of that game, so it makes sense for me to keep them forever. I do think Nia had like a little bit of FOMO as well, just because that is a beautiful figure, but Melia, on the other hand, I think really was only ordered by fans of Xenoblade 1. It didn't have that same widespread appeal that Pyra and Mithra do, because they're much sexier figures, right? So that just cast a much wider net. Xenoblade certainly fits into the dedicated fanbase section of all of this, so does Fire Emblem. I think even though some of those figures have decreased in price, nowadays it's more common to see them like stay the same or go up. I think Chun-Li is a great example of that, the Max Factory version that's behind me somewhere, I don't know if I'm pointing to it, but I feel like that was just the most obvious figure that would go up eventually. Didn't even take that long, but in my opinion, definitive Chun-Li figure. It was beautiful, it's a good size, little expensive, but it was also just because it's Chun-Li, one of the most popular video game characters ever. Not to mention they would advertise this figure to people outside of the anime figure community, very often showing it on like Street Fighter 6 tournament streams. So even if you were not in this hobby whatsoever, this figure at the very least would still be on your radar. There's certainly some more examples I could go through. I think one of the main ones I should just mention before we wrap this up is Toho, as I collect a lot of Toho figures. I do believe this is another one that you shouldn't really second guess. You should just pre-order them if you like them. I don't think I need to talk about the Alter Romelia and Flandre figures, which are now doubled in price, but hell, even the Toho Lost Word figures from Good Smile Company are pretty hard to find. It is nuts to me that the Reimu, which has a flaw in its design where the base just breaks, is actually more money than it initially was for retail. Like, why? If that has such a major issue where you can't even display it without something potentially breaking, why would people want it? I think it's just a situation where people still love Toho that much that it's fine for them. They just like the design that much. I mean, she's the main character, or at least one of the few. And it is really nice outside of that one base issue, but like, man, for such a major problem, it's still demanding a lot of money. We got Kill la Kill. Honestly, like anything from Studio Trigger seems to go up eventually. The Kaseki series, all of those Kotobukiya figures eventually do seem to creep up in price. Horror Bishoujo figures, which are now getting re-released, so perfect time to pick those up. We got Chobits, which only has like 2 really nice figures. Don't kill me if I'm wrong. I've only seen 2 of them, but both of them are extremely popular, and the one that's currently out, super expensive. Make sure you pick up a cheap figure if you like it. We have the Eva series. I do feel like the Asuka figures go up more than the Rei ones. I feel like there is a slight difference in price on the aftermarket for those. So I would say Asuka, definitely pre-order. Rei, you could probably wait. We got Bocchi the Rock, which is a bit of a surprising one. Certainly caught me off guard. Like, I think some of the Nendos are a little hard to find right now, but the bigger surprise, in my opinion, are the Good Smile Company scale figures. 3 of them are currently out, and all 3 of them are actually like way more than they initially cost. So you might have missed out on those, but it did seem like nobody really cared at the time. So frankly, I shouldn't be surprised. Though I do like the one I picked up, I should have bought the others. I am dumb. And yeah, just a couple more because I forgot to talk about these the first time I filmed this video, but we have statues where they're pretty clearly telling you that they're not going to be produced in mass, like they're only going to make a couple hundred or so. Even like some exclusive figures, you should keep your eyes on like how they're doing during the pre-order period, or if they're being sold at numerous sites or only like a select few. We have figures of obscure or even like fan favorite characters that just for some reason don't have a lot of merchandise or anime figures, but a ton of fans behind them. So when it finally does happen that they do get a figure, everybody who likes those characters are going to buy those figures, but it's not like the stores that are stocking them are going to just have them in mass, because it's still not like the most popular thing. Seasonal characters are always a bit of a gamble. You're never really sure which ones are going to stick around, so you kind of just have to play it by ear, see what shows people are talking about even after they air, and if there is a figure or 2 of them up for pre-order, see how many people are talking about that, see how many people have actually pre-ordered it. But it is a very high likelihood that a lot of these seasonal figures will drop in price once people are no longer interested in the figures or the characters. Pre-ordering anime figures, should you or should you not? In my opinion, for the most part, you don't gotta worry about it, but there's certainly some key examples where you should play it safe. You should pre-order them. But let me know what you guys think about this topic in the comments down below. If I missed anything like drastic, like I really should have talked about it, be sure to let me know down there in the comment section. But I'll catch you later. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in a week or so. Have a good one. Peace. And of course, I want to thank the members over on the Patreon for continuing to support the channel, with special shoutouts going out to Swoop, Nemia Dynaskull, Christy Eisenman, Aki Rusu, DT Perigi, Kaif Marie, and Magnitude.